Hello, Krista.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Carol Ann.
Amy.
We are at time. We'll allow one more minute for folks to join. Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started. I'll go ahead and start with introductions and housekeeping items. Hello and good afternoon. On behalf of the Oregon Project Management Advisory Board, welcome to our PMUG presentation of the month. My name is Amy Croucher and I will be facilitating our meeting today. We'd like to start with a few housekeeping items. As you may have noticed, this meeting is being recorded. Please mute your PC or phone if not speaking to help reduce any background noise. If you're not speaking, you are encouraged to remain off camera. A link to meeting resources will be shared shortly after today's session and posted on the DAS YouTube site. Apologies. DAS YouTube channel and OPME AB website. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand or place them in the chat, and Krista or Carol Ann will answer them throughout the presentation. The PMI Virtual Professional Development Conference early registration is now open until September 30th. After September 30th, full price registration will be open prior to the conference to be held on October 10th. Visit pmi.willamette.valley.org for more information. I've placed a link in the chat. The PMUG planning team is also looking for a new member. Please contact me if you're interested in participating. Also, if you're interested in business analyst processes, the Business Analyst Networking Group meets during months in which PMUG does not meet. For more information, visit the BANG website posted in the chat. You're welcome to share with your colleagues and encouraged to spread the word of our PMUG Wednesday sessions. I'm pleased to host this session presented by Krista Harrison and Carol Ann Bowl from the DOJ Legal Tools Modernization Program. Krista is a program manager with DOJ. She is experienced with program management and a demonstrated history of working in Oregon state government for over 20 years. She is a graduate of Portland State University with a BA in finance and has worked in Portland and Salem area and is a dedicated to her local communities. She's skilled in project and program management, policy analysis, strategic planning, risk management, quality management, stakeholder management, organizational change management, and communications. She's also adept at waterfall, hybrid, and agile methodologies. And she is a servant leader who loves to lead teams of professionals to achieve shared outcomes and provide benefits to citizens of Oregon. Carol Ann is a business engagement manager at DOJ. She leads a business engagement team, which consists of organizational change management and business analysts. She's always open to new ideas and welcomes challenges. She believes in hard work. She has a degree in psychology from Michigan State University, certifications in business analysis and lean from Portland State University, in Six Sigma, as well as Certified Change Management Professional Certification, CCMP, in Organizational Change Management. Her background varies from teaching and training to directing and leading teams, and many things in between. She has worked in education, nonprofits, and state government. She's been with the state of Oregon government for the past 8 years. Without further ado, please take it away, Krista and Carol Ann.
Thank you so much, Amy. What a great introduction. It's so nice to be here amongst so many familiar faces and new faces. Carol Ann and I are hoping to have a conversation today and share what we have learned, answer any questions that you all may have, and hopefully get you inspired in your agency to begin the journey of benefits management. And a big thanks to Carol Ann for running the screen. Yep. So we're going to talk through just a few items. Why benefits management? Why are we doing this? Baseline measurements. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the benefits realization plan. And then Carol Ann is going to talk a little bit about benefits tracking, benefits reporting. And it says Q&A at the end, but please, I'd rather have this be a conversation. So as you have questions, please put them in the chat. We would love, or raise your hand, we would love to answer your questions. And in the end, provide all of the templates and information and resources that we have gathered to anyone who is interested here.
Have you seen that thing for that tied my ankle around?
All right, why don't you go to the next screen? So first, why benefits management? And I think this is the most important question to answer. For me, it was finding the real value in each of the projects that we were undertaking as we looked at the portfolio of projects going on at Department of Justice, my agency. We wanted to make sure to identify what we were actually delivering with each of the project efforts. And as we went to look at what we were claiming to deliver, I'll tell you, it got kind of fuzzy. Words that were like better and improved often came up. And how do you quantify that? If I'm getting in front of a legislative committee and I need to explain to them why I need X millions of dollars to improve my IT infrastructure or do some sort of amazing IT modernization effort, what in the end am I claiming to deliver, and how will I know that I have actually delivered it? And these were the questions that started coming to my mind and the minds of others that we were looking to answer. There's lots of information out there on benefits management, both provided by the EIS folks who do StageGate. PMI has information on that. And we're lucky enough in our agency at DOJ to have access to a consultant by the name of Infotech. So we have an Infotech engagement. And they have an entire section on benefits management. And sort of looking at all of this information, Carolyn and I and our team were able to pull together a framework and some templates that we're going to share with you today for how we not only identify what important benefits each project effort is purporting to deliver, but also how we are going to go about measuring. Okay, because measuring, of course, increases the chance that you're actually going to deliver the benefits because someone is paying attention to that. It also increases trust because you are, again, delivering on what it was that you said you were going to deliver. If you can show that you're delivering on that, the chances are that your funding request will be approved. And maybe the next time you go back for another funding request, you will have more trust because you have information and data that you can share and show regarding what actually measurably was improved. The other thing I'd like to say about that is it's important that you do it at the beginning. So there's some sort of accountability as you're selecting which projects are going forward on your portfolio and you're dedicating your resources towards. It leads to understanding of what better actually means, how we're going to measure it, and then agreement on what we're going to be spending our limited resources towards improving. It also puts some leadership on the line for being accountable for making sure that in the end, those things are measured and improvements are made. And that's a wonderful thing. That's great. I think that really helps support the project management and the PMO who are trying, and the project teams who are trying really hard to deliver these benefits, and having strong leadership in the agency and organization that is really driving and paying attention and supporting those efforts is extremely valuable to the end success. So getting a stakeholder on the hook, knowing what we're trying to do specifically, and then putting this plan in action to measure it. Okay, Caroline, I'm ready for the next slide now. Okay, so we have to measure some things. All right, and that's the start of it, is you actually have to measure where are you right now. Okay, we have to take baselines, and this is the part where the plan kind of can fall apart. Oh, I can't measure that. I have no data. I don't know how to do that. I don't know what I'm measuring. all legitimate. Okay, so this process that Infotech worked us through helped us sort of pick that apart and make a plan for what we could measure and what we needed to measure other things and when we'd be able to measure those things. So we start, of course, with the quantitative things. We're looking for objective, measurable things as much as possible. But sometimes that's just an interview with a subject matter expert and understanding where their satisfaction and perspective is. And then, you have a baseline of that. Also reviewing current state of data, databases, technical documentation, anything that you're trying to make better or improve, and understanding what your current state of that particular thing is a really important baseline to go ahead and take. We work for the government, so we oftentimes have access to a great wealth of audit reports, okay? Security audits, IRS audits, Secretary of State audits, internal audits, lots of great information that can point at baselines of measurably where things are. Help desk tickets, if it's a technical system, oftentimes can be a wealth of information. And all of our favorites, surveys, you can just ask people stuff and measure it. So that's another way you can start taking baseline measurements. They also encourage some what they would consider qualitative measurements, the more subjective interpretive things. I guess surveys falls under both, depending on what you're measuring and how you're asking the questions in the surveys. Observing, observation. Again, reviewing the help desk tickets for less data-driven things and more, again, observable, contextual information. And again, sometimes the audits are full of observations as well that can provide qualitative baselines and measures. I'm sure there's many others we're not thinking of, but those were the basics. And then what we have to, oh, go ahead, Amy.
Yes. So can we go back to, so you said benefits should be measured at the beginning. What do you mean at chartering, or do you mean at project management
I would
stage of the
say,
project?
I would say you have to have it chartered. And at chartering, you might want to claim at a higher level some of the benefits.
Okay.
I then created a benefits management plan as we were creating our other project management plans to do a deeper dive. So we have a separate benefits management plan so that we could go to the charter, look at what the high level objectives were that we said we were going to do at the beginning. So that's where they start. And then dive into this quantitative, qualitative aspect of it so you can get to the measuring of that. We did a lot of, we're going to increase or decrease this or that. And now we have to actually start to measure what does that mean, increase, decrease, better, with some actual measurements. And where are we right now? And how are we going to measure it? Are we going to survey people? Do we have data we can access? Can we start collecting data right now? And will that be meaningful? And all of those types of things could be looked at as you dig into it. But I think you're right. It begins at chartering, but just not at this kind of very detailed level.
Right. And for context, so for an EIS oversight project, generally EIS do they want to see the benefits measurement at the beginning, or do they usually require it later in the process?
We were required to do benefits management at either our gate 2, 3 or our gate 3, so a little later in the process. But it was top of our mind from the very
Right.
beginning because we were trying to figure out, first of all, what we're doing, and secondly, how we were going to collect data and what data we might have access to. I was grateful for that extra time because I think it does help you pull together all of this information in a more meaningful and usable way with more context for the oversight analyst.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So yeah, pulling it all together and giving it context. So putting it into what we are calling a benefits realization plan. So how are we actually going to realize these benefits that now we have set forth that we want to do, and we have taken some baselines. So you kind of just break it down and, pick it apart. So, start with your list of benefits. Go to your charter. Hopefully, in your charter, you have at least some level of a list of benefits. And then for each benefit, you just start asking yourself questions. Okay, how long would it take me to achieve this? Is this something that, like, once I go live with my IT project, this is instantly achieved? Or is this something that's achieved over time after go live? Okay. And then you can ask yourself questions like, what are going to be the impact of realizing this benefit, and who's going to be impacted by that? Identifying the stakeholders will help you with later steps as you look to communicate and claim your win for having realized your benefit. And, I'm a project manager at heart. So what am I doing? I'm utilizing all of my project documents. I'm gathering information from my stakeholders. I'm trying to identify all of the information that I need for understanding what it's going to take to realize this expected benefit. So if you're looking to improve your call center, for example, and you have benefits around that, you may want to go and talk about what are some of the pain points to the call center. Wait time, being able to make one call and get your answer, or callbacks or escalations, that type of thing, customer satisfaction. So there's several different ways that you could take a look at measuring those. To do some brainstorming. And then you're going to sort of compile the information and your baseline measurements and create a plan. And it sounds so fancy when you say it like that, create a plan. Like it's sort of a glorified spreadsheet, this plan, with, of course, some words and context to explain exactly what you're doing and why you're doing it. In our agency, we're actually using Smartsheet, but it's the same sort of concept. So in this benefits management plan, in the realization plan, we're going to assign an owner, someone who's responsible for it, and making sure that the realization of the benefits occurs. And then we're going to list out different actions that need to be taken in order for that benefit to be realized, so that you can sort of get a plan of action of what actually needs to happen. This is, I think, where the fun has. And Carolyn, I don't know if in the next slide we have we start to get into some visuals or examples of what that sort of looks like, so people can start to wrap their mind around it.
Yep. You ready to go there?
I'm ready.
There you go.
I was ready, and look, there it is. So, this is our benefits realization plan here for one of our projects. You'll notice that it lists the project name, uh, the name of the project benefit, and some of them are repeated because they have different metrics that we are measuring against. Who the owner is, the metric ID, who the owner is, and then we start listing out any technical actions that need to occur, process actions, training actions, communication actions, and business actions, so that we can really start to get our arms around what it's going to take to get the benefit of a smaller digital footprint in our IT organization. And Judah, who is our manager in that area, will be the expert to help us understand some of those actions, who those stakeholders are, and some of the other pertinent information that will go into this plan.
All right. Well, thank you, Krista. I think I'm going to take it from you now.
Thank you.
So appreciate all of that background that Krista provided for us. I'm going to change a little bit and talk about how we're going to track and how we're going to report the metrics that Krista talked about we were going to gather. I think it's important to know that although this is a very beneficial tool in project management, it is also a tool that I use in organizational change management. I use this same tool to track the benefits that we're receiving from organizational change management. So you can use this same tool in a multitude of ways. So once we've gone through and we've measured, let's figure out how we're going to track them. So the benefits tracking. So in the benefits tracking plan, we want to make sure, as Krista mentioned, that there are metrics for each benefit. There's really no use in having them tracked if you're not keeping track of, what that metric is and what you want it to be. Those metrics need to be specific. They need to be something that you can achieve. As Krista mentioned earlier, we don't want those to just be like, we want it to be better, we want improvement. We need to put some data and some numbers around those things. When you're filling out this portion of the plan, you will note the measurement method. How did you gather that measurement? What did you use to do that? And it may be a multitude of ways. You're going to log when the baseline measurement was taken. It's important to know where you started and when that was. And then, of course, you're going to log the end side of it, which is when that benefit was actually measured. It's a pretty simple process. And luckily, Infotech put it in a nice, neat package for us, which we will happily share if you're interested. When we get to the next part of the benefits tracking, we're going to talk about the project. So there will be a drop down that you can see on the visual, which you'll see in a minute, of each of the 4 components. So each of those things that we had mentioned. The project benefit is, as it sounds, the description of the benefit. What exactly is it that we're measuring? And it's important to be specific on this because you don't want to have benefits that you're tracking that overlap, because that will muddy up your data. The metric ID, which would be that specific name or identifier that is automatically assigned to each measurement. As Krista mentioned, we use Smartsheet, and if anyone's familiar with Smartsheet, it gives you an ID automatically in that first column. So you can use that, or you can come up with your own measurement ID to use as well, whatever meets your needs. And I think that's something that's really important about this benefits tool for the benefits management plan, is that it can be kind of tailored to meet your specific needs. Amy, did you have a question?
I was just going to clarify, can a SharePoint list also be used for benefits tracking?
Yep, absolutely. Okay. It's just that kind of an Excel SharePoint list, Smartsheet. You could use it in a variety of ways, just whatever tool you're most friendly, you're most comfortable with.
Okay. And I also wanted to mention I appreciated the visual earlier. That was great. Thank you.
Yep, we're going to show you another one here in just a minute. So the metric obviously is the measurement that you're using to quantify, and that needs to be specific so that there's no questions or guessing. This needs to be a very objective, or I'm sorry, a subjective measurement is what we're looking for. The baseline measurement method is the method that we use to get that first measurement. Like Krista mentioned earlier, the baseline measurement. How did we get that? What was the decision and how did we decide to do that? And then we have the baseline date corrected, which is just the date that, or collected, excuse me. That's just the date, of course, that you went and got that actual measurement to start us off. Finally, as we're looking at the benefits tracking, there's the measurement method. So the method, how did we go about collecting and posting these ongoing implementation measurements? What were the methods that we used? There could be a variety of methods, as was mentioned earlier. And of course, you're going to use whatever works best in your particular situation. The benefit tracking quarter, some of these I feel silly almost explaining to you because they're so self-explanatory, but that's which quarter in which you measured and collected that benefit. The data is the actual measurement during that specific quarter. So like, what did you pull together in Q1, Q2, etc. The benefit realization sign-off date, that's when it's actually been realized. So when did that benefit come into realization? Tracking that date so that you can understand what your time frame has looked like. That can be very helpful for using this for another project. You can go back and look at what it took you here, what were the kind of time frames you had, so that you can better plan for projects in the future. The benefit realization sign-off owner, who's the person in charge of this? Is it going to be your project manager? Is it going to be an OCM person? Who is in charge of that? And that's going to be where they sign off and say, yes, this is actual true information. And then we have the visual. Again, I apologize for the size of it. It's a lot of information in a long picture. So hopefully you can see that. You can zoom in, or as we said, we can share that with you afterwards if you're more interested in it. And basically these different columns that you're looking at are just kind of what I walked through with us, like what project is it, all the way through to the benefit tracking dates. Amy?
I was just going to share that we will be posting the presentation as well as a link to the video recording on the PMUG website provided in the chat earlier. So,
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So that's benefits tracking. It's not anything really new. It's just so nice to have it all organized in one simple place where it doesn't seem like such a stressful thing. I know that I've been on projects where it's like, oh, we have to track the benefits. Well, it's not always easy from an OCM perspective to track the benefits of how people are feeling. That's not an easy thing to track, but through this process, we found ways that we can identify, and it's around questions asked, like Krista had said, some surveys and things like that, to really get that more emotional human side of information, but to get it into something that is quantifiable.
And I also just want to add one other thing here. It allows us to claim success and celebrate that success. Transparently, everyone knows what success looks like and means. And when it's reached, you can celebrate that moment together and claim your victory as a team. You did that. It was something that was important. Everybody worked on it together, and now we get to share that moment of being able to deliver that tangible benefit. And I just think that is one of the other really exciting things about this particular process. We do this kind of work all the time. It's just not as visible, and it's not as easy to celebrate and to claim as it is when you put it in something like this.
Thanks, Krista. I appreciate that. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. You can't celebrate your victories enough, because it seems that Unfortunately, people often remember what went wrong. But if we can start from that positive attitude and get them to think about what went right and feel, proud that they were part of that success, it just goes so far. I'm a very people-y person, if you haven't noticed. So benefits reporting. So how are we going to share this information and get these reports out to the stakeholders? Well, who are your stakeholders? You need to identify who those audiences are. You're probably not going to share the same information and reporting structure with your exec team as you are with your IT team or with your total staff. So you're going to want to tailor those conversations and make sure that you are addressing the appropriate audience with the appropriate information. But let's look at what kinds of things we could share for each benefit. So who's the stakeholder that's getting this information? Like I said, is it the exec team? Is it EIS? Is it the internal legal tools team? What communication method are you going to use? Are you going to have a lunch and learn and talk people through it? Would you rather just send this in an email? Or maybe it's a Teams meeting, depending upon who it is that you're meeting with. What was your strategy? How did you come up with getting the benefits measured and people, and what did that look like? What were the steps that you took to get here? And what strategy for that reporting do you have? Is this going to be a monthly report, a quarterly report, which goes right into frequency? How often do we need to share the benefits reporting? Because I know you've all probably worked on a project and there's times when there's no benefits coming through yet because we're still planning, or we're still in the middle of setting things up and getting them ready and there's not any benefits at that time. So it makes sense to be sharing this benefit reporting once things are really getting going and you've got a lot to share, because we don't want to say, well, there's no benefits right now. We don't want to say that. We want to wait until we have something to be proud of. The next thing on the list is the type. So for each benefit, what type of benefit is it and what does that look like? And that will help you to better understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. It takes you back to the objectives of the program. And then again, you're going to log the start and end date for reporting to each stakeholder so that you have a record of how that was done. And then that takes you to our visual for this one. So you can see here, this is a benefit. This is the benefits reporting. For me, this is very similar to how you might keep track of things in a communications inventory. But it's, the same thing where you want to make sure you have this out. You can have it planned and, have this listed out for how far you're going to go. Like maybe you're going to, use your frequency as monthly. You might be able to, kind of list down what you're looking for and prepare those things as well. I did see a question just pop up in the chat, and I believe it was, are we going to share this? We will share not only the PowerPoint, as Amy mentioned, but if you're interested in the template, we're happy to share that as well. So I hope that answered your question in the chat. All right, so we've gone through all of the steps of measuring benefits and making sure that we have metrics and all of those different things ready to go. What else can we answer for you? Are there questions just burning in your head? I'm going to confess I can't see the chat very easily. So if there are chat questions, Amy or Krista, if you could read those out, I would appreciate it.
Definitely.
I think the other thing that I would just say as an admission is it sounds so easy when you say it like that, Krista and Caroline. But this stuff is not easy. Getting someone to tell me exactly how percentage or dollar or hour wise something's going to change. Having someone take accountability and be the owner and be responsible for that. Actually being able to collect data and measure things and get people on board. That sounds really hard. And it is really hard. Okay. Nothing about having a process and a form and a template makes any of those conversations easier, but it makes it more transparent. It gives you a purpose and a reason for why you're having the difficult conversations. And in the end, when you're all in alignment as to what you're trying to achieve, it makes it so much better to then claim victory. Because what if you're claiming victory and one of your other stakeholders didn't think that's what victory looked like? And that's always an awkward thing.
Very well said. Thank you, Krista. There is a comment in the chat. Do you have any advice on how many to have for a project? There seems like there could be too few or too many.
That's a really good question. I think that it depends on the size and the scope of the project that you are undertaking. A small, short-term, simple project, maybe 3 to 6 benefits that you could measure is more than you will be able to achieve. Whereas if you're doing a multi-biennium modernization program, you should have way more than that, okay, that you can actually show that you have achieved. And maybe also not only time, but also money wise. How much money are you spending on that? The more money you are spending, the more you should be able to claim in actual, tangible, measurable benefits that you're providing for that money and or resource usage. So I'd say no littler than 2 or 3, tangible benefits for a small thing up to, I think Legal Tools has over 50 benefits spread amongst its 4 projects that we are measuring and hoping to deliver. But that's a very large multi-biennium modernization effort. So I think there's like a scale. Great question.
Any other questions?
You're welcome.
You're muted, Amy.
I don't see any additional questions. Oh, it might just be the thank you. Just the very helpful thank you from folks. So I'll go ahead and get started with
There is one that just added.
There's another
Alan.
question.
There you go.
Did you get a lot of input from your managers as you created the benefits?
Yes. I think that was actually very important and critical to understanding, especially as we were trying to understand what we could achieve in going through that business case and chartering process. That's when I really had a lot of input from the managers. And then as we got into specific assigning owners and talking about what actions we would need to take and how we would measure it, we did lean on specific managers because you're looking for someone who can be accountable for that. And even if they have to delegate that to a staff person, having a manager be an owner, if at all possible, it is important depending on, again, the size of both your project and your agency. Good question. I think it's about buy-in. Yeah, you really need to get buy-in from people. And then write it down and then have everybody look at it and agree. And the other magic is when you have changes in staff, and we all experience at times changes in staff, because we have great people and they get promoted and get other opportunities, right? It's great to have it all documented and written down so the new person coming in can look at what the team had agreed the benefits were, and how we were defining them, and who was owning it and what they are now going to be responsible for owning, right? And I think all of that has a lot of benefit in terms of continuity as well. Again, more important on longer term efforts than shorter term efforts, but still a good bit.
Sure. So I see a question targeted to me that asks, how can I tell a little bit about more how I use this for organizational change management? And I apologize if you can hear my dog who just decided to start barking. So for organizational change management, obviously there are benefits that we are trying to achieve for the human side of that change. We want to make sure that people are supportive. We want to get their buy-in. We want to get adoption. We want to make sure that people are continually using this. Sometimes when you add a new, I'll just say software because that's the world that I live in, you add a new software and you don't get rid of the old software, people will fall back into that using that old software situation. If you can't get rid of it, then you need to make sure that you've sold this enough. So from an organizational change management perspective, we still have benefits that we are looking to achieve. So in the beginning, when we're planning, some of our benefits are really laid out around communications. So we're sending emails and we want click data. Are people opening it? Are they going to the SharePoint site? Are they using the SharePoint site? And we can get those kinds of that kind of data and understand the benefit of how many people are we reaching. For Krista and I are at DOJ, and there's about 1,400 people there total. And not all of them are going to be impacted by this particular program that we're working on, but 1,000 of them are. So initially starting that out with those benefits being, as I said, very targeted to the communications. Once we start working into processes where maybe we're working on business process redesign, things like that, we can again start with looking at measurements of seeing whether or not the designs that have been proposed will actually work in the system, and especially around how lean can that make your new process? So with your new tools, can you take away some of that redundant work? Can you take away some of the double checking, some of the some of the workarounds? I don't know about you, but we have a lot of workarounds. And, so those kinds of things can be measured from more of an OCM perspective. Now, you can wrap those into your actual benefits management plan for your program or your project as well. But I personally like to pull the OCM things out separately because they're very different. I'm a true believer in the fact that, the project management is dealing with the technical side of the change, and the change management is working with the people side of the change. And sometimes the people will think that that there's no benefit to this. What do you mean you're taking my system away? Whereas from the project manager side, they're like, this is great. We're doing all of these things. So I think it's important to do them that way. We do try surveys as well, and we try to make them something that we can measure. So we don't want to just have a bunch of narrative surveys, although those provide great information. But for this particular aspect, I think it's important that we have questions that are more that you can pull metrics from, where you're asking things like, how likely would you be to, share this new software with a friend, kind of thing, on a scale from 1 to 5. So that's kind of how we pull those into a little bit more of the organizational change management. And if you have more questions, please feel free, because I can talk about organizational change management all day long. You're very welcome.
That was excellent. Thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. We'll go ahead and get started on closing at this point. So I need to place a link to the chat for a survey real quick. Okay, so we hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Krista and Carol Ann, for presenting
Thank
as well.
you.
Yes, I appreciate it. As well as Tiffany Goetz and Alan Thompson for helping to coordinate and monitoring the chat and all of the things they do to help get these presentations out there. I've posted a link to a short survey in the chat to help us improve future PMUG experiences and to nominate yourself or a colleague as a future speaker. You can look for a follow-up email with links to resources after this meeting, and all the resources are available at all their different locations. And please share with your team members and those who may not be on the PMUG listserv or interested in becoming a PMUG planning team member to reach out to me, Amy Croucher, and I'd be happy to get those things done for you. Again, if you're interested in learning more about business analyst processes, visit the Bang website posted earlier in the chat and enjoy the rest of your week. PMUG will convene again in November. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.